Alrighty, so I'm actually pre-recorded this preview for the first full slate midweek action of the 2024 MLS regular season because I'll be going to Minnesota on Wednesday. I'm going to be going to Allianz Field to watch a very intriguing Western Conference battle between Minnesota United versus the LA Galaxy, which we'll talk about. But in any way, today, as I said, we're going to be previewing the first full slate action of the midweek action of the 2024 MLS regular season. We're going to have all 13 games that's going to be happening on Wednesday and throughout that tight window between 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, all the way up to the last game that's going to be kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. And because I'm going to be going to the Minnesota versus Galaxy game, most likely I'm not going to be able to watch any of these action. Well, I'll try to watch MLS 360 and basically keep an eye on these action as we go. But yeah, just to let you know that the review that I'm going to be doing, which is probably going to be one big review, just like I did not long ago on Thursday, because I'm actually going to be flying back to the Bay Area relatively early. That's going to be relatively not as detailed as what we saw from my previous review of the weekend's action. But with that being said, let us begin by talk about the first game, and because it is still Heineken Rivalry Week, we do have a couple of rivalry games. But we start off with FC Cincinnati versus Atlanta United, and both of these teams are definitely heading into a different direction heading into this game. I mean, for Cincinnati, they're definitely riding on the high. They're keeping pace with Inter Miami for that Supporters Shield race. Whereas for Atlanta United, yeah, this last month has been an absolute free fall for them. I mean, they have gone to a point where they're now below the red line, falling, losing three straight home games for the first time in their club history, and their record is now down to 3-3-5. Now, this is the first of five games that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. And in terms of the all-time record, Atlanta does have the edge with a 5-5-3 over FC Cincinnati, but recently Cincinnati definitely has had the edge over Atlanta, and that includes the last meeting where Cincinnati was able to win 2-1 against Atlanta United before it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. Then Cincinnati won 2-1 against Atlanta. Then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. And that there's no doubt that when you look at the last five head-to-head meeting, it feels like this probably is going to be similar in terms of the fact that Cincinnati is going to be heavy favorites, especially with the way that, as I said, they've been playing very well lately. They just got a huge win in the Hell is Real Derby, a revenge Hell is Real Derby win against Columbus, and now they're facing against an Atlanta team that we talk about Atlanta's struggle at home, but they're also have their struggle on the road this season as well. In fact, so far I don't think Atlanta has even won a single road game this season, and they have been struggling on the road, even going back to last season into under Gonzalo Pineda. So yeah, something tells me this not could not be pretty for Atlanta, who desperately need a win, and that this is probably the last team that they want to face for a team that desperately need a win. But that being said, we got the Atlantic Cup next between DC versus the New York Red Bulls, and this is definitely going to be one of the more anticipated Atlantic Cup. Consider it's not often recently we have seen the Atlantic Cup being very competitive, but both of these teams are very good, and I expect this could be a very competitive Atlantic Cup. Now in terms of record, 4-5-3 in favor of DC, whereas the Red Bulls is 5-5-2. All-time meeting in the Atlantic Cup, 44-19-40 in favor of DC United. And in the last Atlantic Cup, it was crazy. It was an 8-goal thriller where the Red Bulls won 5-3 on the road against DC. And then it was a 1-0 Red Bulls win over DC before it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then the Red Bulls won 4-1 against DC, and then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So yeah, DC, they haven't won an Atlantic Cup against the Red Bulls, at least in the last five head-to-head meeting, and they're definitely looking to change that with them playing at home. But again, they're facing against a Red Bulls team this season that they're a team that I know they had a bit of a rough patch, at least from a couple of weeks, and especially after they got absolutely destroyed by Inter Miami. But they got a big bounce back win against New England, and they're looking to trying to do the same thing here on the road, especially with the way that their offense has definitely been playing well. But that goes the same for DC too. I mean, the DC this season their attack has also been good. And this is why I feel like, when you also look at the last five head-to-head matchup, it feels like it's been either an Atlantic Cup that there's going to be tons of goals that's going to be scored, or there's not going to be a lot of goals that's going to be scored. I think it's going to be the first point. I think there's could be a lot of goal that could be scored in this game. And don't be surprised that in terms of these midweek games, we're going to see a lot of goals again because it feels like last season that was kind of the theme in terms of the midweek action. There's always some crazy thing, and there's always high scoring affair, and this could maybe be one of those games, especially with both attack playing very well recently. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus the Columbus Crew. So remember the first time when both of these teams met each other in the Wilfred Nancy derby, I was expected to be a high scoring affair because both of these head coach with Wilfred Nancy and Laurent Courtois being in the same coaching tree, using the same tactics, and I think seeing with that exciting rate of soccer, that means it's going to be a high scoring affair. It ended in a nil-nil draw. So we'll see whether or not if this is probably of me saying that this is going to be another high scoring affair that could end the same. Hopefully it's not. I think there could be goals in this one, especially with the way that Montreal is another team that has been done very well on the attack. They haven't been doing very well on the defensive front. Now, in terms of the record, 3-3-5 in favor of Montreal, whereas Columbus is 3-6-2 all-time, meaning 14, 6, and 10 in favor of Columbus. Last five head-to-head matchup, the first ever meeting earlier this season, it was a nil-nil draw between both of these teams. Then Columbus won 2-1 against Montreal before Columbus won 4-2 against Montreal on the road. Let me get myself some water here. And then it was a 4-1 win, or I'm sorry, it was a 2-2 draw between Montreal and Columbus. I was actually looking here, and we'll talk about this game in just a bit. But then Montreal was able to win 2-1 on the road against the Columbus Crew. So yeah, there's no doubt that Columbus has had a couple of victory against Montreal, and again, this is a game where I'm pretty sure both of these teams would love to have a bounce back performance from the weekend's action. I mean, for Montreal to play very well against Inter Miami, but unfortunately nothing to show for, and they're playing against a Columbus team that that this Crew team is not happy after what happened this weekend, losing to their interstate state rival in a highly anticipated derby, and we'll see whether or not if they can get a win, and especially Wilfred Nancy getting one better over Montreal, because that he definitely has a vendetta over Montreal, especially the way that he left the team. Now, moving on, we got the Florida Derby between Orlando versus Inter Miami. Now, I know some people will think that this is going to be not close whatsoever, and this could be similar to what we saw in the first ever meeting, and it could be right. I mean, Orlando could get themselves absolutely destroyed in this game against an Inter Miami team that just cannot stop scoring goals right now. But that being said, Bear, I remind you that Inter Miami has never beaten Orlando City on the road in this derby, and I'm pretty sure Orlando is looking to try to keep it that way. But coming into this game, they have a 3-3-5 record, whereas Inter Miami has an 8-3-2 record, and right now they're just right now not only the hottest team in the league, but a team that just cannot stop scoring because of Messi and friends. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, it's actually 5 wins apiece for both of these teams and 4 draws. And as I mentioned in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, yeah, that was an ugly resort for Orlando down in Miami. I mean, that was one of the most one-sided game we've seen. Certainly, probably the most one-sided game in terms of this rivalry. It was Miami winning 5-0 against Orlando before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then Orlando won 3-1 on the road against Miami before Miami winning 4-1 against Orlando City. And then Orlando City winning 1-0 against Inter Miami. Now, as the old saying goes, all narrative and all kinds of unbroken record is going to come to an end, and you just fear that maybe this could be the time where Inter Miami might finally get their first win over Orlando City down in Orlando. But certainly Orlando are looking to not try to do so. I mean, they were successful in terms of holding on to a lead against the Union in the last game, despite the fact that they were just getting completely crazily outshot. So we'll see whether or not it can do it against Inter Miami if they at one point find themselves leading in this game. I mean, honestly, when you look at the last couple of games, it really doesn't matter if you're leading or trailing against Inter Miami, or at least in the last couple of games, we've seen teams been able to lead against Inter Miami, only for them to find out that yeah, Inter Miami has that ability to come back, and not only they have the ability to come back, but they can come back in just like that because of how much talent that they have. So yeah, this should be kind of interesting to see how it's going to go, and that I think the big thing for Orlando in this one, not just to beat Inter Miami, but not get absolutely destroyed like they did in the first ever meeting. Now we got the Philadelphia Union versus NYCFC. So this is also a matchup between two teams that's kind of heading in different direction. NYCFC, they've been playing relatively well. They have won 4 out of their last 5 games, and that include a 3-2 win against Toronto over the weekend. Although it was kind of in a way where we're still gonna have that talking point as the week goes along of what happened after the game. But for now, they're going to be playing against the Union. By the way, NYCFC with a 5-2-5 record, while the Union, yeah, ever since they finally had their unbeaten record broken, and was the last team to have their unbeaten record broken. It's been nothing but bad play from the Union, or nothing but just losses for the Union. They've lost 3 straight. Now their record is 3-5-3, and that includes them losing 3 straight home games as well, which is just absolutely unheard of. I mean, this team has always been great at Subaru Park, and that, as I mentioned in the review, that's the first time they've lost 3 straight at home since 2011. I don't think they have lost 4 straight ever in their club history, so they definitely don't want to make wrong end of history in this game as well. But in terms of the all-time record, 10 wins apiece, 2 draws. Last 5 head-to-head matchup was a 2-1 win that the Union has over NYCFC before the Union won 3-1 against NYCFC. Then the Union won 3-1 against NYCFC before the Union won 2-1 against NYCFC. And guess what? The Union won 2-0 against NYCFC. So yeah, the Union definitely have an own it over NYCFC, at least in the last 5 meeting. They beat NYCFC in the last 5 head-to-head meeting, and they're definitely looking to try to do so here as well, because yeah, again, this is a team just like Atlanta desperately need a win. But unlike Atlanta, at least they're playing against a team that is more beatable, and not to mention they are at home as well, which I know the recent home record hasn't been good, but they need a win badly. They absolutely need a win. They do not want to get to a point where it started to really real its ugly head again in terms of them going through a losing run, which is something we have not seen a Jim Curtin team has done for a very long time now. So yeah, we'll see how whether or not if the Union can get that desperation win, or whether or not if NYCFC can get another impressive win and continue to rise up in the standings. Now, moving on, we got another Copa Tijas. It feels like every single week we always get a Copa Tijas match, and this week we get the Copa Tijas of Austin FC versus the Houston Dynamo. So Austin, they have a 4-4-4 record, and they're looking to try to bounce back after losing in their Copa Tijas weekend's matchup against Dallas, and that one was a very frustrating result because they were the better team. They outshot Dallas badly, just couldn't put the ball into the back of net. They're playing against a Dynamo team that is fresh off a 2-1 win against Sporting KC and have a 5-2-4 record. And this is the first of, I believe, 5 games that's going to be happening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. So yeah, basically it's pretty even in terms of the midweek action. 5 games that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. 5 games that starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I wonder if that's by design from Apple TV. But anyway, in terms of the all-time record, Austin have won 6 out of 9 over Houston, and it's kind of interesting that there hasn't been a draw in terms of this meeting. And if you remember, the first time that both of these teams met each other, Austin really stole the game because they won 1-0 against the Houston Dynamo in a game where the Dynamo pretty much dominated Austin, but Austin somehow able to win it, and they not only won it, but they won it on an Emmanuel Rigoni goal. I mean, that's when you know it's crazy when or you could say that Austin absolutely stole it when Emmanuel Rigoni would be the one that scored the winning goal to get all 3 points over their Texas rival. But before that, it was a 3-0 Austin win over Houston. And the Dynamo did win 2-1 against Austin before the Dynamo won 2-0 against Austin, and then Austin winning 3-1 against the Houston Dynamo. I also would like to say that Austin has definitely played much better at home recently, and really ever since the good run that they've been in and kind of turned around after just a disastrous start to the season where it looked like they were going to be nailed to win the wooden spoon this year. They've been playing very well at home. Now that being said, the Dynamo has also been playing very well on the road as well, which again it's kind of a weird feeling for Dynamo fans to say that they've been playing well on the road, considering for a long time they have always been a very bad road team. But they've been playing. They play very well. They got a big win in their previous game against Sporting KC. They got a Hector Herrera that looks like he's started to be even more healthy as the season goes along. So this should be an interesting Copa Tijas kind of matchup, and it's kind of tough to call who, of course, will win this Copa Tijas. I mean, Houston obviously desperately need to win it because if they want to keep up in the standings, and so far they haven't done very well in the Copa Tijas standings. If they can get a win, they're right back into the hunt in terms of winning the Copa Tijas trophy. Now, moving on, we got the Chicago Fire versus Charlotte FC. So yeah, for Chicago, anytime now that they should be getting that big win to turn around their season, right? Because it's usually around this time where they've been getting off to a slow start, but maybe it's around this time when they start to give their fans a little false hope and maybe getting a win to get things going. Now there is a chance that they could get this win, though. I say they have a chance to do so, but they're playing against a Charlotte team that definitely are playing with some confidence, at least in the last couple of games. They have a 5-2-5 record, while Chicago a lowly 2-4-6 record. And in terms of the all-time meeting, yeah, it doesn't really favor Chicago either. Charlotte has won 3 out of the 4 all-time meeting, and that include the last meeting when Charlotte was able to win 2-0 on the road against Chicago before Charlotte won 2-1 against Chicago again. Then Charlotte win 3-2 against the Fire at Soldier Field. So far Charlotte is unbeaten in terms of their visit to Soldier Field against the Fire. And then the Fire did win the first ever meeting between both of these teams. They win 3-2 against against Charlotte on the road. So yeah, we'll see how this of course would turn out. I mean, for the Fire, they desperately need something. If they don't want this season to be just a complete loss season, they need to win this game. I mean, I think a lot of Fire fans have said that, even going back to the New England game where I've said that was kind of a desperation derby. I won't call this a desperation derby because I don't think Charlotte is that desperate after getting a couple of wins in the last couple of games. But for Chicago, it is definitely desperation time because I know we're still a while away from the playoffs, but we're gonna start to see teams that you can kind of already tell that they're probably done this season and probably are not gonna have enough to muster a playoff charge. And I think Chicago maybe are along that spot. And them in New England is probably right around that spot of teams that probably is going to be fighting for the bottom spot of the Eastern Conference rather than maybe have a spark and come back to being competing for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Now, moving on into the last game on this board is the game that I'm going between Minnesota versus the LA Galaxy, and again, I'm very excited about this one. Not just going back to Allianz Field, in which in my opinion is probably the best stadium in MLS, and I promise no bias. It has shown in terms of that, but also the fact that yeah, this is between two teams that is near the top of the standings. It's a second versus third battle. Somehow, despite the fact that Minnesota is the only team that did not play this match week and they win the bye week sweepstake, they're somehow still second in the Western Conference. Now, in terms of all-time meeting, it is oh god, I think I wrote the wrong all-time meeting. I wrote Nashville and Toronto in terms of the all-time meeting. So let me change that because that is not correct. And again, this is what happened when you decided to write the board relatively quick, and I did exactly that. So let me just change that real quick. Actually, let me just go to here. Go to Minnesota and the Galaxy. The Nashville and Toronto is actually the next game I'm gonna talk about. So yeah, there we go. Let me change that. So it's 7-4-3 in favor of the Galaxy. But in terms of the last couple of meetings, boy, it's been bar burner in terms of the last couple of head-to-head meeting between both of these teams. The last meeting was a 5-2 win that Minnesota has against the Galaxy. Keep in mind that was the first game under under Sean McCauley after Adrian Heath, of course, was relieved of his duty. Then the Galaxy won 4-3 against Minnesota, and yeah, I don't want to remember that game because I gone to that game and Minnesota had a 3-1 lead, and then they absolutely collapsed in the second half. But then before that, Minnesota did win 3-2 against the Galaxy. That also was a game I went to, and that was a game where Minnesota were actually up 3-0 in that game and almost had a meltdown in the second half. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a free draw between both of these teams. Again, seems like this game there's going to be goals that could be happen, and I won't be surprised that is the case because the Galaxy they pretty much are one of the most entertaining team to watch. I mean, between them and Miami, I think they might be even more entertaining in terms of a neutral perspective because while Miami game is exciting because you see all the star player of Miami and seeing the greatest player of all time basically just destroying their opposition. Galaxy games are exciting to watch because not only they show their high-end talent, but they also show their problems in terms of not able to defend set pieces and also give up goals on the other end and tend to make their give opposition chances to get into these high scoring affair. And again, I won't be surprised this might be one of those. Though I will say that Minnesota hasn't been scoring a ton of goals this season, and Minnesota also is a team that I think this season they've only scored more than two goals like in two occasions. The only high scoring game I know Minnesota was involved was in the game against Orlando City, and that was a bit of a crazy game between both of these teams. We'll see whether or not if that's going to be the case in this one as well. I mean, again, so far of all the game that attend at Allianz Field, I actually have been unbeaten so far. When I went watch Minnesota play at Allianz Field, the last time I went, it was a 3-0 win that they had against the Rapids. I don't think it's going to be even more. I don't think it's going to be comfortable in 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 this game. I think this could be a very not only a very interesting game, but it might be a fun game for a neutral, but might not be a fun game for me if this gets really tense, especially as we near the end of the game. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards, and well, actually, I am gonna switch boards live because why not? Why not? I've been doing this more often now, and I feel like I should be just do this now permanently when I just switch boards because it's not that hard to just switch boards. All I have to do is bring in the other board and voila, there you go. Moving on to the next game. Well, actually, apparently my camera is a little bit having a low issue in terms of adjusting. Actually, let me just put this down like that. Hopefully, it'll re- hopefully it will focus. Well, actually, is it focusing? I don't think it's focusing, so that could be a bit of a problem. Uh, yeah, is it focusing? Yeah, let me try to do this here. And again, for some of you, you could just skip part of the video of me trying to make the camera focus. There we go. Got the camera focus at last. Anyway, moving on, we got Nashville versus Toronto FC. So yeah, this is a game again. It's a game between two teams that's kind of heading into different direction. I mean, Toronto did lose in their last game, but they're still doing very well so far this season in terms of expectation. Can't say the same thing about Nashville though. They have a 2-5-4 record, whereas Toronto has a 6-1-5 record. And in terms of all-time meaning, 2 wins apiece and 3 draws. And in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then it was a 0-0 draw between these teams. And then it was an exciting 4-3 win that Toronto has against Nashville before Toronto win 2-1 against Nashville. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So yeah, most of these matchup has been relative low scored. I mean, Nashville games at least, besides the Montreal game where they really exploded on the attack, it's been pretty low scoring. So maybe this could be one of those games. I mean, I know that this is also a game where if you're Nashville, you have to win this game. I mean, I know they're playing against Toronto, and I know Toronto has been playing well, but keep in mind, Toronto is not going to have Bernadeschi in this game because of that red card that he got in the last game, and Insigne, I think he maybe could come off the bench in this one. I don't think he's completely healthy yet. So there's no doubt that Toronto is going to be missing that key pieces because Bernardeschi has been playing relatively well for TFC lately. So yeah, against a little bit of a shorthanded TFC side, Nashville needs to win this, especially when they're playing at home. And this season, their home record has been okay, but with the way that their road record has been absolutely horrendous, they need to win this if they want to kickstart their season. Now, moving on, we got St. Louis versus LAFC. So St. Louis, they finally got a result that is not a draw in the last game, and as a result of that, they still have 7 draws so far this season with a 3-7-1 record. Whereas they're playing against an LAFC team that played probably one of the better game in the last home game where they absolutely stomped the Vancouver Whitecaps 3-0 and improved their record to 5-3-4. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, there's only 2 other meetings between both of these teams. LAFC won the first meeting, and then the second meeting was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. So as a result, all 1-1 in favor of LAFC. Now, keep in mind, as much as LAFC played very well against the Vancouver Whitecaps, it is going to be very interesting to see whether or not if they can repeat that in this game. And it's not because of the fact that they're playing against a St. Louis team that don't usually lose games at home and really don't lose games at all this season. I mean, they only lost 1 time so far this season, but it's just the fact that consistency has been a problem for LAFC this year. For every good game that LAFC has had this season, the very next game they basically doesn't follow that up. And usually that's on the road too. Like their road record this season has not been good whatsoever. They have lost a lot of road games this season out LAFC, and that's kind of unheard of because they're usually a very good road team. And this is not going to be easy because again, playing against St. Louis, playing on the road at City Park, a place that is one of the toughest places to play because of the atmosphere, and knowing that St. Louis would want to get nothing but also another win for them. I mean, it's good to finally get a win, but we'll see whether or not if they can do it again in this game. Yeah, it should be a very interesting kind of matchup. And also, not to mention, St. Louis played very well in that game against Chicago and looked kind of like a little bit of their old self, especially from their expansion season for the way that they play against the Fire. But remember, that was against the Fire. And yeah, the Fire is one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. Now, let's see whether or not if they can do it against one of the better teams in the Western Conference. Now, moving on, we got the Colorado Rapids versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So I would say this is kind of the bounce back derby because, yeah, both of these teams kind of had some rough games. Well, at least not for Colorado. They play well at home against the Quakes. The problem is they also blown a 2-0 lead in that game. And the Whitecaps, meanwhile, yeah, they got absolutely destroyed by LAFC. That was probably the worst performance that Benny Sartini team has played all season long, and they're looking to bounce back in this one with a 5-3-3 record. Now, this game is one of 2 games that start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So anytime when you have 2 games that's happening on Mountain Time, that means RSL is also playing at home, and you of course will be right. But in terms of all-time meaning, 12, 8, and 10 in favor of the Rapids, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then the Rapids won 3-1 against Vancouver before the Whitecaps won 2-1 against the Rapids. Did I say the Rapids won 3-1. Again, getting late in the evening. I'm trying to get this done and then head to bed. But then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and that the game, as I said in its name, it's a bounce back derby. We'll see who can, of course, bounce back after having a bit of a uh rough matchup in the weekend. And I would also say that, like I said about the Whitecaps, if they want to have a statement win, I mean, I'm not sure if this could be a statement win. It could be because Colorado has been playing very well this season, and I even mentioned even in those losses that they have this season, they play very well and they play hard and in even in these losses, and we'll see whether or not if they can do it again in this game against a Whitecaps team that they definitely want to forget what happened down at BMO Stadium on Saturday when it was pretty much a no show in that game for Vanni Sartini's team. Now, moving on, we got RSL versus the Seattle Sounders. So RSL still at the top of the Western Conference. despite blowing that 2-0 lead against the Galaxy with a 6-4-2 record. Again, part of that is mainly because Minnesota didn't play. If Minnesota would have played, I think they would have had a chance to maybe catch RSL for that top spot. Whereas for Seattle, 3-4-5 is the record. But keep in mind, the Sounders just got a big win in the Cascadia Derby, and I've said before, when you get a big win in the Cascadia Derby, that means you can maybe use that as momentum. But in terms of the all-time record, 17-9-16 in favor of RSL, and the last five head-to-head matchup was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Before Seattle won 2-0 against RSL, then Seattle won 2-1 on the road against RSL before RSL winning 1-0 against the Sounders, and then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. So yeah, this should be an interesting matchup. I mean, for RSL, they're looking to continue their relatively good form. They've been playing very well lately, that's kind of the reason why they're at the top of the Western Conference. But it's not going to be easy against a Sounders team that I know the Sounders still struggle this season, especially creating chances. But again, they got a big win in the Cascadia Derby. They finally got their first win against their hated rival, the Timbers, for the first time in six Cascadia Derby. And I mentioned about the Cascadia Derby being a big kind of momentum boost for teams that can last for a couple of games, and the Sounders are hoping that it is the case after they're getting that big win against the Timbers. Speaking of the Timbers, they're going to be playing against the San Jose Earthquakes, and I don't know if you could call this the desperation derby. I mean, I guess you could because the Timbers. I mean, it's been bad. Like they are in the longest active winless run out of any team at 7 right now. But the good news is they play against the San Jose Earthquakes, and normally I say it's a good news because the Quakes they have never beaten the Timbers at Providence Park, and anytime when the Quakes have to make that daunting trip to Portland, I usually say it's an automatic L. But I will also say that this is probably the 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 most likely I can say that maybe the Quakes can get finally break that little curse that they have at Providence Park and get their first win because after them getting their first win against Colorado on the road, what seems like for the first time in years, can't say that they can do it again in this game on the road against a struggling Timbers side. Now, this game is the only game that starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and it's a shame because if I wasn't going to Minnesota to watch the game between the Loons and the Galaxy, I would have easily just start doing the start writing the boards after this game. This game is over and basically start the review for part one of the midweek action relatively quickly. But anyway, in terms of the all-time meeting, 20-10-6 in favor of the Timbers. So yeah, another thing I will also say about the Timbers, they pretty much own the Quakes. The Quakes have rarely got a win against the Portland Timbers, and that included the last game where they lost 2-1 on the road against the Timbers before it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then the Quakes lose 2-1 again against the Timbers because the Quakes can't get win against the Timbers on the road. The Quakes did win 3-2 against the Timbers, but then the Timbers won 2-0 at home against the Quakes. So again, if you're the Portland Timbers, if you need a game to desperately stop this win this run, this is a game to do so because you're literally playing against the team you have never lost at home, and if they do lose this game at home, I'm just gonna say that maybe the Quakes are truly back, and that looks like maybe playoff island could be actually reached, and maybe they could have a very Sporting KC kind of like a season where how last season Sporting KC just got off to such a terrible start. Looked like they were nowhere going to be near to make it to the playoffs, and they did. Seems like the Quakes maybe could do so if they can get a win. But if the Timbers does win this, or actually if they lose this, oh boy, you better believe Phil Neville is going to be on the hot seat. I mean, if he's not on the hot seat already, he probably could be because yeah, this is bad with the way that they could maybe be the first team to hit double digit winless run to this season, and who would have thought that that was the case after a good decent start the Timbers had in the first couple of games of the season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for my preview of all of these games that's going to be happening in the middle of the week. Like I said, most likely I'm going to have to do one big review on Thursday after I get off the plane because yeah, there's It's not that I don't want to do the review after when I come back to the hotel from watching the Minnesota versus Galaxy game at Allianz Field, but it's also an early flight too that I'm gonna be taking, and I don't think it'll be not be fun for me to do a late review, and not to mention the lighting at the hotel is pretty terrible, and I think it's best for me to just come back and basically do the review, and also with the sun's still shining out outside, and basically talk about all the games that happened in terms of this first midweek action, or at least the first full slate of midweek action from this season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. Like I said, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games and also the other games, and let me know your prediction below for these 13 games that's going to be happening for this midweek, also known as match week number 13. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.